The night of the blood moon ceremony was supposed to be the proudest night of Alira's life. Instead, it became the night that broke her heart in front of the entire kingdom. She stood at the edge of the gathering, wrapped in a plain gray cloak, while the noble wolves of Ashvale filled the courtyard in silks and polished armor. Alira had never belonged among them. Her body was thin, and her steps were quiet, nothing like the strong, broad-shouldered warriors who ruled the kingdom. She had been born weak, unable to shift quickly, unable to run as fast or fight as hard as the others. All her life, people had looked at her with pity and sometimes with scorn. But tonight, the ancient bond would be revealed. The moonlight above the sacred stones would show every wolf their true mate, chosen not by choice, but by the moon goddess herself. Alira's heart pounded as she waited her turn, praying quietly that whoever her mate turned out to be, he would not be cruel. When her name was called, she walked forward on trembling legs. The crowd fell silent as the moonlight touched her skin and began to glow faintly, the sign of the bond awakening. Then, across the courtyard, another light rose to meet hers. It came from Chaol. Chaol, the future Alpha King, feared and admired by all. He was the strongest warrior in the kingdom, the pride of the royal bloodline, a man built for war and command. Alira had barely dared look at him before, and now the ancient magic was declaring that they were fated to be together. For a moment, hope bloomed in Alira's chest. But Chaol's expression twisted the instant he understood what the glow meant. He stepped toward her, sniffed the air, and his face darkened with disgust. "This cannot be right," he said loudly, so that everyone could hear. "She is weak. She has no strength, no power. She is not worthy to stand beside me, let alone rule beside me." The crowd murmured. Some laughed quietly behind their hands. Alira felt her whole body go cold. "Please," she whispered. "The bond has chosen us. It cannot be undone." Chaol's eyes were sharp with contempt. "Then I reject it. I reject you." Gasps rippled through the courtyard. To reject a mate bond before the moon goddess was almost unheard of, a great insult to the old magic. But Chaol did not care. He turned to the elders and demanded that Alira be moved to the servant quarters, declaring that she would never be seen at his side as anything more than a lowly worker. Alira's father tried to protest, but Chaol's authority as the future king silenced him. That night, Alira was led away in shame, her cloak still damp with tears, while behind her, the ceremony continued as though nothing important had happened. The months that followed were the hardest of her life. She was given the lowest chores in the castle, scrubbing floors, carrying water, tending the fires long after the sun had set. The nobles who once ignored her now openly mocked her, calling her the Alpha's shame, the weak mate no one wanted. Chaol barely looked at her, and when he did, his gaze held nothing but irritation, as if her very presence embarrassed him. Yet despite the cruelty, something quiet and unbroken remained inside Alira. She did not let bitterness consume her. Instead, she found comfort among the other servants, the old healers, and the forgotten elders of the kingdom, people who had also been overlooked by a court that valued strength above kindness. She learned the old healing songs from a blind grandmother who lived near the kitchens. She tended the sacred garden that no one else wanted to care for, coaxing life back into wilting herbs with patient hands. She sat with sick children when their parents were too busy to be gentle, and she listened to lonely old warriors who no longer had anyone to talk to. Without realizing it, Alira became beloved by the very people the kingdom had forgotten. Meanwhile, strange things began happening in Ashvale. The sacred grove at the heart of the kingdom, a symbol of the moon goddess's blessing, began to wither. Its silver leaves turned brittle and gray, and no matter what the priestesses tried, nothing could restore its life. The moon itself seemed to dim whenever it rose over Ashvale, casting a pale, uneasy light compared to the bright glow that blessed neighboring kingdoms. The elders grew anxious. Whispers spread that the goddess was displeased, though no one dared say why out loud. Chaol dismissed the rumors, insisting that the kingdom's strength alone would carry them through any trouble. He trained harder, fought harder, and grew more determined to prove that he did not need a weak mate to rule successfully. As the next high festival approached, the most sacred night of the year, Chaol made an announcement that shocked the court. He declared that since the bond with Alira had been rejected, he intended to choose a new future queen, someone strong enough to stand beside him and lead the kingdom into a new era of power. The court celebrated the announcement. Alira, hearing the news while scrubbing the floor of the servant hall, felt a familiar ache settle in her chest. She had long stopped hoping that Chaol would change his mind. Still, hearing it confirmed so publicly hurt more than she expected. On the night of the festival, the courtyard was filled with lanterns and flowers, and hundreds of wolves gathered to witness Chaol choose his new queen. Alira was ordered to attend as a servant, carrying trays of food through the crowd, invisible to the very people who once mocked her to her face. Chaol stood at the center of the courtyard, tall and proud, ready to present his chosen bride, a noble woman known for her fierce fighting skill. The crowd waited eagerly. But before he could speak the ceremonial words, the sky changed. The moon, which had been dim for months, suddenly blazed with silver light so bright that everyone shielded their eyes. Wind swept through the courtyard, carrying the scent of blooming flowers, though it was not the season for them. The sacred grove, visible in the distance, burst back into full, glowing life, its silver leaves shining like stars. Then, in the center of the courtyard, a figure of pure moonlight began to take shape. The crowd fell to their knees. Even Chaol, stunned into silence, dropped down in reverence. It was the moon goddess herself, descending before them in a form none had seen in generations. Her voice was gentle, yet it carried across the entire courtyard, as if spoken directly into every heart. For too long, this kingdom has honored strength of body while ignoring strength of spirit, the goddess said. You have mocked kindness. You have punished gentleness. You have cast aside the very soul I chose to guide you. Chaol lifted his head, his face pale. Goddess, forgive me. Silence, she said, though not unkindly. You rejected the mate I gave you, believing weakness of muscle meant weakness of heart. But true strength is not found in claws or commands. It is found in patience, in compassion, in the courage to keep loving a world that has been cruel to you. The goddess turned, and her glowing gaze settled on Alira, who stood frozen near the edge of the crowd, a serving tray still in her trembling hands. Alira, the goddess said, come forward. Alira could not move at first, certain she had misheard, but the crowd parted, and gentle hands guided her forward until she stood before the glowing figure of the goddess herself. You have shown this kingdom the very qualities it forgot how to value, the goddess said. You have healed those in pain, comforted those forgotten, and remained kind, even when kindness was never returned to you. Tonight, before all who once mocked you, I name you not servant, not rejected mate, but Queen of Ashvale. Alira's breath caught. Around her, gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by a wave of murmurs. Some knelt at once, moved by the goddess's words. Others stared in disbelief, unable to reconcile the frail servant girl with the title of queen. Chaol rose slowly to his feet, his face a mixture of shame and disbelief. Goddess, please, I did not know. You did not wish to know, the goddess replied. You judged with your eyes instead of your heart. That is a lesson only you can learn now, through humility. With that, the glowing figure placed a crown of woven silver leaves, taken from the very grove that had bloomed again, upon Alira's head. The moonlight above brightened further, bathing the entire courtyard in warm silver light, and then the goddess faded away, leaving behind a stunned and silent crowd. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, one by one, the nobles who had mocked Alira for months began to kneel before her, their faces pale with shock and shame. Even Chaol's own warriors, men who had followed his lead in scorning her, lowered themselves to the ground. Alira stood in the center of it all, her heart pounding, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. She had spent so many months believing she would never be more than an embarrassment, and now the entire kingdom knelt before her as their chosen queen. Chaol approached slowly, his proud posture gone, replaced by something she had never seen in him before, genuine humility. He knelt before her, lowering his head. I was wrong, he said quietly, his voice rough. I let my pride blind me to who you really are. I do not expect your forgiveness, but I ask for the chance to earn it. Illyra looked down at him, feeling a swirl of emotions she could not fully untangle. Vindication, yes, but also grief for the months of pain she had endured, and a strange, aching hope that maybe, somehow, things could still be mended, if not romantically, then at least honestly. "You hurt me deeply," she said, her voice steady despite the tears. "I will not pretend that did not happen, but I did not become who I am tonight by holding on to bitterness. I will not rule with cruelty, even toward you." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "You may stay in this kingdom, Chaol, but you will not stand beside me as before. If you wish to earn any place in my life again, you will have to show it through actions, not words, over time." Chaol nodded, accepting her words without protest, understanding that it was more mercy than he deserved. In the days that followed, Illyra began her reign not with grand declarations of power, but with the same quiet compassion that had guided her through her darkest months. She visited the sick, listened to the concerns of the poorest families, and restored the sacred grove with the same gentle care she had once given to the wilting garden behind the kitchens. The kingdom, which had once valued only strength, slowly began to understand the deeper strength the goddess had spoken of. Chaol, stripped of his expected throne, took on a humbler role within the kingdom's guard, training younger warriors, and more importantly, learning patience and humility from the very people he had once dismissed. It was not easy for him, and there were many days when old pride threatened to return. But slowly, through consistent effort, he began to change, earning quiet respect rather than fearful obedience. Illyra never rushed to forgive him fully, nor did she close her heart completely. She allowed time to reveal the truth of his growth, choosing to protect her own healing above any pressure to reconcile quickly. Months later, on a calm evening beneath a bright, healthy moon, Illyra stood on the balcony of the castle, looking out over a kingdom that had finally learned to value kindness as much as strength. The sacred grove shimmered in the distance, fully alive, a constant reminder of the night everything changed. She thought of the girl who had once been mocked and cast aside, scrubbing floors in silence, believing she would never matter. That girl had not disappeared. She was still there, inside the queen who now ruled with a gentle, steady hand. The moon goddess had not simply given her a crown. She had shown an entire kingdom that true worth could not be measured by strength alone, and that even the most overlooked heart could rise to lead with grace, compassion, and quiet, unbreakable strength. And as the moonlight settled softly over Ashvale, Illyra smiled, finally at peace with the queen she had become.